Hey, Drew.
Hey, Mike.
We did a new podcast, a new Mike and Dr. Drew show.
And as usual, it's amazing.
It is. It's the best podcast in the world. You talk about your cancer.
My prostate cancer. Tell the whole story.
That's right. And I talk about Ray Liotta ruining my suit.
And this podcast will be the first time I tell the whole story about the prostate.
Yeah. The blobfish.
Blobfish, a lot of evolutionary biology somehow enters in, and a lot of FU.
Yeah. Oh, I say FU to a lot of people. Yeah. Screen doors.
Insects.
Pandas suck. Pterodactyls. Big black bears or something.
Nope, we didn't do that.
Whatever. Either way, it's a great podcast. And you get Ronnie Radke from Falling in Reverse. All on the Mike and Dr. Drew podcast.
This episode of The Steve Austin Show is brought to you by Hulu Plus. With Hulu Plus, you get total control to watch thousands of shows, wherever you want, whenever you want. You can binge on full seasons and watch your favorite current shows like Community, South Park, SNL, and more. And right now, Steve Austin listeners can get an extended free trial of Hulu Plus by going to huluplus.com/Steve. That's huluplus.com/Steve.
The following program is a PodcastOne.com production.
From Hollywood, California, by way of the Broken Skull Ranch, this is the Steve Austin Show.
Give me a hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Now, here's Steve Austin.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Steve Austin Show, the show for the working man. Hey, if you're driving to work, put that seatbelt on and go earn that paycheck. Working man gotta pay the bills. Hey, if you're kicking back, sipping a cold one, kick your shoes off, get settled in, and let's get some stories going. First of all, I'm glad you hit that download button because people are hitting that button all over the world. And this show is spreading like wildfire thanks to you. So, if at the end of this show, if you've enjoyed yourself, hey, tell two friends, and tell them to tell two friends, and tell them to tell two friends, and so on, and so on, and so on. You know what I'm saying, folks? Help a brother out. Help spread the Steve Austin Show. If you're new to the show, send me an email to questions@steveaustinshow.com. Let me know where you're listening from. I'm getting emails from all over the world. The more information I get of who and where and what you are, the better I can make this show. Hey, I'm in this as therapy for myself and entertainment for you. You help a brother out, I will help you out. Now, you guys know, or if you don't, you do now, I just moved into a new studio. And it's been a little bit of a transition, and it threw me out of my rhythm for a second there. And, I jumped off and started recording, and I didn't get a real formal, quote-unquote, formal introduction to my new sound guy, Arthur Webb. He's on Twitter at Arthur H. Webb. Arthur H. Webb, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, Steve. I'm appreciating this formal introduction that you're discussing right now.
Break down this H for me. What does the H stand for?
That H stands for my middle name.
What's the middle name?
My middle name is Hubert.
Hubert. Now, I assumed it was, H stood for middle name, so
right.
It's Hubert.
Yep.
So what happened? Was Arthur Webb already taken, or you wanted the distinction of that H?
You know what? As a matter of fact, I created that Twitter account shortly before my grandfather died, and I'm named after my grandfather, whose his name was Arthur Hubert Webb I, and I put the H in there as a little homage to him because he was sick at the time, and I wanted to keep the name alive. I don't go by Hubert. He went by Hubert, and I wanted to just have something in there that reminded me to think of him every time I looked at it.
I dig that. Hey, man, tell me a little bit about your background. You've been doing this for some time now.
Oh, I've been doing radio and podcasting better part of 10 years.
Radio and podcasting, better part of 10 years. Did you go to school for this? Art, this show's for the working man. There might be someone who's wanting to break into radio. So what did they do? What did you do?
I had an undying love and passion for radio. I knew from a very, very early age on that I wanted to get into audio-type content. I like the mystery and the kind of ambiguous type of theater of the mind control that you had over what you were presenting to people. So I knew very early on when I was like 9 years old, it was what I wanted to do. And I screwed around in college for a couple of years at Cal State San Bernardino. I was born and raised.
You're a California cat. Where are you from?
I was born and raised in Riverside, California.
Gotcha.
I went to school at Cal State San Bernardino, screwed around in a communications major for a little bit, and did college radio, and at one point realized that I I got into a point where I could do this myself. I don't need school for this. Came very naturally to me. I loved it. I was passionate about it. I spent more time at the college radio station than I did in my classes, and I just woke up one day and I said, screw this. If I'm going to do it, I'm just going to do it, and I'm not going to look any other direction. And I decided that I would go figure out a way to find a job. So I went and I found a gig, very entry-level board operator position in San Francisco, California. I moved up there, dropped out of school, moved up there, took the job, and it's been a nonstop ride.
Nonstop. Now, you're pretty smooth on the horn here. You pretty smooth with the women folks?
I'm not one to toot my own horn, but yeah, I do all right. I pull my own fair share, yeah.
Oh, man, you're killing me.
So, I've screwed around a little bit. I've been on the air in Portland, Oregon. I was on a rock station up there for a long time, Rock 101 KUFO.
Rock and roll. Now, you play in a band, right?
I've played in a few bands.
What kind of music you play?
I play a lot of rock type.
Who you like?
Classic grooves. Queen. I like the Beach Boys. I like the Beatles. Bands like Jellyfish. I like Ben Folds a lot. A lot of melodic kind of rock and roll.
Man, that's different than the current stuff that's going on today. What do you dig these days?
It pisses me off, dude. These days, it's a little more tough. I find myself listening to more classic stuff when I'm driving around. But, there's bands like Taylor Lock and the Roughs, and there are some local L.A. bands that I'm into.
But it's funny because you're trapped back in the day. You're 28 years old. You're a youngster. Yeah. How'd you go dig that stuff up? You ought to be listening to the current stuff.
I have an obsessive passion for music, and I do nothing but drive around with songs stuck in my head all day. So things get old quickly for me. So over the course of my life, I've taken a lot of time to research and learn a lot about pop music and just the entire scene. And really, there's not a lot that I don't know about the history of pop music. I have spent a lot of time educating myself on that stuff.
There's a guitar here in the studio behind me. I don't pick the thing up because I can't play. I wish I could. It was my original dream in life to be a musician, but I sucked, and I turned into a pro wrestler. Now I'm talking on a podcast. You pick up this sax and you start strumming. How long have you been playing guitar?
I don't play guitar. I've screwed around with the guitar for.
Your main thing is piano, right?
Yeah, I play the piano. I play a lot of keys, synthesizers, keyboards, and stuff like that. I enjoy screwing around with those things. I'm just one of those people, man. I sat down at a drum kit and I figured it out within 2 hours. I have this natural ability with audio and sound and music. I'm left-handed. That guitar in there is a traditional right-handed guitar,
right.
So I can't even really play the guitar all that well because it's a right-handed thing. I don't like to say I play the guitar. I know chords. I can strum around, but I just screw around. I don't play seriously.
Well, Arthur H. Webb on Twitter. Welcome to the Steve Austin Show. I wanted to get a proper introduction.
I appreciate that. That was
We're
really
providing
nice
audio whoop-ass, and it takes a team to do this. And Stacy's back there. I don't know if Stacy can hear me. She got a headset on her. She got a microphone. But Stacy's the one that's putting this show together. So she's the one that's making chicken salad out of this chicken scratch. Stacy, you got your ears on back there? How we sounding? We doing good?
I think it's doing great. You're sounding great.
Well, now that we're getting all dialed in and getting a little bit of into a rhythm and some chemistry, it's starting to come around. I'm digging you guys, and I'm having fun. But the first few days I came in here were a little rough for me. I had to get settled in.
But, I think that you're just hard on yourself because I think you came in here and you rolled, just from the get-go.
It's a work in progress, but you've been doing this for about 20 years?
Yes, sir.
All right, this show's for the working man and the working woman. What kind of training you got to get where you are?
Well, I think I owe it all to UCLA. I was a comm major there, and they taught me everything I needed to know about
You're a California
writing.
gal?
I am. San Diego, born and bred, and then moved up here to go to school, and for some reason stayed.
And you're here, and you're working on the Steve Austin Show. I want to make a formal introduction. Stacy is the brains behind the show, all the production value, the things that make me sound way better than I am. Stacy, welcome to the show, and thank you for everything that you do.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to be working with you on your podcast.
Well, let's rock and roll. I appreciate that. Let's take a little bit of break. I'm going to come back with the one and only voice of ECW, my main man at WWE now, Joey Styles. Coming right back at you. Hey, folks, I know you guys have tried Hulu.com, but I want to tell you about Hulu Plus. I'm going to drop some 411 on you. Hulu Plus lets you watch thousands of hit shows anytime, anywhere. And you can stream this on your TV or on the go with your smartphone or tablet. Now, if you're talking about wrestling shows, they got WWE stuff like SmackDown, NXT, Monday Night Raw, WWE Extras, and even WWE en Espanol. along with thousands of others. You can also search me, Steve Austin, and check out shows I've been on. Yours truly, acting on the Hulu Plus. Hulu Plus is only $7.99 a month. That's $7.99 for all the shows and movies you can watch. Catch up on your current shows, binge on an old favorite, or catch a great movie. You can do it all on Hulu Plus. You got something? Check us out. Right now, you can try Hulu Plus for a couple of weeks free on me when you go to huluplus.com/Steve. Just make sure you use huluplus.com/Steve so you get an extended free trial and so they know that we sent you. It helps keep the lights on and gives you a better deal. One more time for the extended free trial, huluplus.com/Steve. Are you in or not?
The Steve Austin Show. The Steve Austin Show.
All right, folks, coming back from a break. It's about time. Let's go ahead and pop the top on a can of audio whoop-ass. My guest today, let's talk about him. His name is Joey Styles.
Oh my God!
Yes, the Joey Styles, the voice
Oh my God!
of ECW, the original 2-for-1 special. That's right, the one-man play-by-play and color commentator who would single-handedly call some of the most violent, horrific, and spectacular matches in the short but illustrious history of Extreme Championship Wrestling. And, by the way, the man who turned, "Oh my God," into a catchphrase that most certainly encapsulated the atmosphere, attitude, and happenings at a glorified bingo hall. Yes, the infamous ECW Arena, home to some of the most die-hard fans in the history of professional wrestling. Joey Styles, welcome to the show. How are you?
Steve, I got to tell you that if WWE ever runs out of relevant, deserving people and is reduced to having to induct me into the WWE Hall of Fame, I'm going to have you present me. Because that was phenomenal. I'm not even that good. You built me up. It's all downhill from here.
Hey, brother, you know, it's dancing. You got to help me. I got to help you. So we're going to get through this thing together. We're going to drop a bunch of good stuff and talk about ECW, some WWE stuff. And actually, you and me have been talking on the phone quite a bit with the impending storylines of the struggles of young Daniel Bryan taking on the regime of WWE. You guys reached out to me to give the kids some advice, and you and me have been talking a lot. So, man, we were talking the other day, and I said, man, I got to have this guy on the show. And, of course, you know I was a big fan of yours from way back in the day when you were the one-man show for ECW. So I'm glad to have you here and talk a little bit about pro wrestling, as you like to call it.
Yeah, and since this is becoming the Mutual Admiration Society, I have to tell you this. First of all, congratulations on this podcast. It's phenomenal. And I want you to know that your podcast is now my favorite form of entertainment, more than any terrestrial radio show, more than any satellite radio show, more than any TV show. My commute to and from WWE headquarters is only tolerable because of your podcast. The problem is it's weekly, and now I've caught up. So I don't know what I'm going to listen to on the 4 days a week where there's no Steve Austin podcast. I might just do me and then imitate you. You know what I mean? Like, you know, get personal optimization at onit.com. Get yourself some T+. I can't do the rest of that spot. It's not PG, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. I feel energized, optimized, and I'm fixing to get ECW eyes as we go back down the road and memory lane into some of the stuff that you saw, felt, and heard along the way. And I appreciate you listening to the show, man. People are going to dig our conversation. And it's been one thing that I've learned, Joey, in the past, talking to the likes of Jerry Lawler, Ric Flair, Terry Funk, some of these cats whose careers go back over 40 years, and certainly your time in the business and all the stories that you've compiled in ECW and WWE and your journeys down the road. We won't be able to cover it all in one show, so if you enjoy your time here on the show, I would love to have you back. We will simply cover what we cover today, move on down the road, and hit it again in a month or two.
Okay, and I got to tell you, you have revolutionized the jargon at WWE.com because everyone now, all these, I mean, I'm 42, so I'm working with all 20-somethings at WWE.com, and they all use the term cat. You cats got your stories in yet? You cats going to hit your deadlines? You have everyone listening to your podcast who works at WWE.com. You have revolutionized the jargon of an entire generation.
Man, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but hey, you know what? I appreciate that, but let's stop talking about me. Let's talk about you a little bit, because I remember when I first turned on ECW, it was back in the day. I was down in WCW before I came up there and worked as the superstar Steve Austin. And you were the voice and the face there. Of course, Paul Lee doing his thing. But, you know, I never did really know a whole lot about your background. And I always like to do my reading, do my research and my due diligence. But I don't know a whole lot about you personally. So, dude, in looking, you were born in Stamford, Connecticut?
I was actually born, it's not quite right on Wikipedia, but I leave it as it is. I was born in the Bronx, but at a very young age, I would say 10 years old. My parents moved us from the Bronx to Stamford, Connecticut, and the house I grew up in, my parents' house, is still a mile from where I am right now at WWE headquarters. I lived a mile from WWE and drove past WWE headquarters every day to head to either my advertising sales job in the city or to the ECW arena or the ECW studio.
I knew that had to be a work. I said, there's no way. Here we go. This cat was born in Stamford, Connecticut. This cannot be. It must be a work.
But I did grow up in Stamford. I went to grade school here. I went to Stamford Catholic High School. I lived here up until about 10 years ago, so I didn't move to Connecticut to work for WWE. I consider myself a Connecticutian.
Connecticutian.
That's not as catchy as Texan, I know.
But it is 6 syllables, so I give you credit for that. The Connecticutian. Joey Styles. Joe, I got to ask you, dude, you're a smart cat. You graduate from Hofstra, and you go into the advertisement business. What did you actually do? Break it down for a regular cat like myself.
All right, for the working man, you know when you pick up your Sunday newspaper and there are coupon booklets in there to buy, groceries and stuff like that? Dude,
we shop with coupons. Me and my wife do. Go ahead.
There you go. Unfortunately, I don't have beer coupons, so I feel bad for you there. But, So basically, I was a sales assistant, and I worked up my way to salesman, and then I became a vice president of sales. I sold print advertising and managed a group of salespeople as well all those years while I was also calling matches for ECW. I had 2 parallel careers.
So you were on your road. You were doing the advertising thing before the ECW gig came up?
Just about the same time. Where it started was I saw my first wrestling match on a little 13-inch black and white TV. It was November 15th, 1983. I'm flipping through the channel on Saturday morning. And it was when Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson beat the Wild Samoans for the WWE World Tag Team Championship. And awesome. I was captivated. Because, first of all, I'm looking at Tony Atlas and Rocky, even in black and white. There's Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson who are built like 2 Greek gods.
Absolutely.
More captivating than them because, frankly, bodybuilders grow on trees, are these monstrous Samoans who just scared the hell out of me. But still, the most colorful character on the TV is Captain Lou. This guy who's 5 feet tall and 5 feet wide with this perm and this goatee and rubber bands and his hairy belly hanging out of his shirt. And he breaks the chair over the Samoan's head. And I'm watching this, and I was captivated, and I got it right away. You know what I mean? Like, I got what it was. Because even by the age of, let's say I was 13, I got a pretty big mouth, as you know. I've been punched in the face probably more than I should have. So I understand that no one's going to punch you 25 times in the face over the course of 15 minutes. So it clicked. I got it, and I made up my mind from that point on. First, I was going to be a professional wrestler. Then I realized that God did not give me the physical gifts. I'm sure you've seen the movie Rudy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you know that scene, he says that I realized that God didn't give me the physical gift to be a football player, and they show that whole scene where he's on the grunt team, he's on the practice squad.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a moron. That's why I didn't wrestle. The guy, Rudy, should have just been happy getting an education from the University of Notre Dame. So when I realized that I did not have the physical tools, but I had the gift of gab, I said, okay, well, somebody is going to be the next Mean Gene Okerlund. I'm going to make that my goal. And for somebody to beat me to that job, they're going to have to outwork me, which wasn't going to be the case. So as I went through high school and I chose a college, I chose Hofstra University. And I don't mean to offend people from Hofstra, but it's not the most highly regarded university.
Well, then why'd you pick it?
Because it was on Long Island, and that's where Pro Wrestling Illustrated was published. So I figured once
Pro Wrestling Illustrated, to my listeners who do not know, used to be the absolute Bible of professional wrestling, correct?
Yeah, thank you very much. There was no internet, so there was the Pro Wrestling Illustrated family of magazines, and my plan was to choose Hofstra on Long Island, work for the school newspaper, make some inroads, and then make that my into professional wrestling.
Smart move, planning ahead.
That's exactly how it worked. I'll say there was a little bit of luck in there, but I had a plan, and I went for it. My parents, they were not thrilled with me choosing a college that way because I had gotten into more esteemed academic schools because I was a good student. And when I told them that was my plan, they wanted to make sure I had a plan B because that's a pretty long-shot plan.
But you told them your ultimate goal was to get in PWI.
I told them my ultimate goal was to be a pro wrestling announcer.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what was plan B?
Plan B was everyone I knew who had a lot of money was in sales. The best way to make a lot of money working for somebody else, if you don't own your own business, is to be in sales because you get a piece of what you bring in.
Right.
So that was plan B, but I wound up doing plan A and B simultaneously. But basically, sure enough, somebody who, my boss, his name was Jim Sheehan, who works at Hofstra University, knew one of the photographers at London Publishing. He brought me there because he knew my goal was to get into wrestling. I went there and I met Bill Apter, and I met Craig Peters, who was there, and I met Stu Sachs, who was still there as the publisher. I gave them some writing samples. They got to meet me. They hired me as an unpaid intern. I was basically filing photos because the magazines were all based on physical photos. Nothing was digital. And they let me start writing. I wrote, it's big work now. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I wrote some letters to the editor. I wrote some stories. I wrote some worked interviews. And sure enough, that led to me meeting Paul Heyman. When he was in WCW, he came to Long Island offices to shoot the famous Uncle Sam cover, I Want You for the Dangerous Alliance, which you were in.
So when you met Paul Heyman, did you guys all of a sudden click, frick and frack, or how was this meeting?
He came in and I was just a grunt. In fact, I think the photo is somewhere on WWE.com, but what had happened was I had scored through Bill Apter some announcing. There was a small independent promotion in Westchester County, and they were looking for a color commentator to work with Craig DeGeorge, who worked briefly at WWE and then went on to do mainstream news. In fact, I think now he's calling the Florida Marlins baseball, so he's going to have a career. I went and did an audition, and I spent a summer. The guy was only in business for, a few months, but still, I had a whole summer's worth of doing wrestling announcing on a show that was on Sports Channel America, and through tons and tons and tons of mergers and acquisitions, I guess would now be the NBC Sports Network. So I showed Paul a tape, and I said, Mr. Heyman, if you don't mind, I'd like to show you a tape.
The pitch.
And, he watched the tape, and I told him, and this is where, I can be very forward. I said, please be honest with me, and just don't blow smoke. If you don't think I'm any good, please tell me. And I had never met the guy, but I'm very forward. And he told me what he liked about my work, what things I could work on, and then as graduation was approaching, so this is spring of 1993, I went through a very rigorous interviewing for like 2 days in Manhattan, and I met with everyone all the way up to the CEO, and I got this job to be a sales assistant at what is the division of News Corp. It's a very big company. So a plan B was in place. I still didn't want to give up on plan A. So I took my tape and I sent it to WWE, which was around the corner from my house, and I sent it to WCW, and then I followed up with phone calls. I spoke with Bruce Pritchard. He didn't seem that interested. Fine, it is what it is. I left a message for Bill Watts, who was in charge of WCW at the time. Bill Watts actually called me back, and the problem was by the time I called him back, he had been fired. It was right around that time. So I reached out to Paul, and Paul said, it was a show at the arena, I want to say it was like June 13th, 1993, and he was not even the booker at that point. He was just a talent. Told me to come on down for a tryout. Paul didn't tell anyone else this.
Paul's famous for doing that.
Yeah. So I find the building, and I get in the back, and I'm in street clothes, my first time in Philadelphia, and I start changing, and I'm in my underwear, and back then I was wearing tighty-whities before boxer briefs became...
Thanks for sharing that with me.
No problem. And Todd Gordon walks up to me, and he said, "Who are you?" I said, "Hi, I'm Joey Styles. I'm an announcer." And he goes, "I'm Todd Gordon. I own this company. What are you doing in my locker room?"
Hey, now, stop, Joey. When you're a new guy into a territory or in the pro wrestling business, period, you're scared to death or nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. And then when the owner of the company, the territory, whatever, shows up and puts you on the spot, it is a nightmare. Please proceed.
Well, as you would say, I didn't know whether to crap or wind my watch.
Yep.
And I probably did both, which, again, is unfortunate because I was wearing tighty-whities. So I said, Paulie Dangerously invited me down here. So he calls Paul over. Paul calls Eddie over, and he goes, "Eddie, this is Joey Styles. He's going to audition tonight." And Eddie goes, "Fine." And Todd's like, "Whatever." So I did color commentary that night as a heel, which really isn't my strong suit because I'm not that good at heeling on people. But then Paul took over the book, and the first thing he did was make me his play-by-play man. And he taught me, first of all, I got to thank Paul here and now for giving me my break when nobody else would. And also, Paul told me straight up, he had me in the studio, he said, "I was taught by Jim Ross. I'm going to teach you everything that Jim Ross taught me." So I indirectly learned from Jim Ross, who then helped me directly here at WWE. So I learned from Paul Heyman, and I learned the business from Paul Heyman. And I can't, for all the times he drove me crazy. And
Paul can do that to anybody. And we, of course, we both love Paul Lee, but he can drive anybody absolutely crazy.
Yes. But I owe him so much. I mean, here we are 20 years later, and I'm working for WWE, and I'm in digital media. I'm no longer an announcer, but the reason I got my foot in the door was as an announcer, and had I not been the voice of ECW, I just would have been another announcer.
Well, you brought up Jim Ross a while ago. Let's talk about him just for a second. Jim just recently announced his retirement from WWE, and I know you'd had a conversation with him because I guess you thanked him for all the time that he spent helping you learn how to tell stories. Can you elaborate on that or your thoughts?
Oh, yeah. Basically, I finally came to WWE, and I call Taboo Tuesday. It's a big secret. They fly me to San Diego, I believe. I don't know if you're a Seinfeld fan.
Absolutely. The guy's great.
All right, so we kayfabe the whole thing, and I'm speaking with Sue DeRosa, who still works for Kevin Dunn. She is one of the nicest people I've ever met. And they fly me in, and they said, "We're going to keep this very low-key." So I said, "Okay." I said, "Give the driver the name Art Vandelay." And that turned out to be a mistake because not only is that a more famous name than Joey Styles, but the low-key town car that's supposed to pick me up wound up being a bright white super stretch limo. This could not be less kayfabe. Thank God I'd been out of the business for 4 years, and nobody knew who I was, but I made my surprise. I called Taboo Tuesday with Jerry Lawler. They let me go completely unproduced, like they did at ECW One Night Stand 2005. It was part of a 4-week audition. After the show, I saw Vince again, and I said, "Mr. McMahon," of course he goes, "Call me Vince."
Right.
Mr. McMahon is my name on TV. I go, "How did I do?" He goes, "You have great passion. You did great." He goes, "We're just going to have to WWE-ize you a little bit."
What did WWE-ize you mean?
Basically, and I found this out, and I was told by Taz how it works, and Vince is very hands-on with announcers, is that I was, what I did best was play-by-play, and Vince didn't want play-by-play. So what he said was, stop doing play-by-play, tell stories. And Kevin Dunn would tell me, we want you to tell stories like JR, but they couldn't tell me exactly what that meant, and I wasn't sure. Which stories, the storylines we're currently doing, do you want me to enhance those? Do you want me to? I didn't know what it meant. So,
got you.
6 months I'm on Raw, and it was probably, let's say I had the second worst announcing career at WWE, only because Mike Adamle followed me. If it wasn't for Mike, I would have that dubious distinction. So it's me, King, and Coach. Love those guys both. But Vince now starts in my ear giving me verbiage. And people think that Vince yells and he's nasty and all that. That has nothing to do with it. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. I have never dealt with that before. So the way I try to describe it is, I'm sure most people listening have run on a treadmill and you've tripped up. So you're running on a treadmill and you trip up, but you don't fall, you just kind of catch up, and then you get back in your rhythm. Well, I couldn't process the extra voice in my head in addition to my color commentator. So every time Vince would give me a line to say, and it'd be a full line he wants you to repeat, I would mentally trip up and get out of my rhythm. So then I would catch up, and he'd feed you another one. I was tripping through these broadcasts to the point where something that was so much fun for me and so natural wound up being difficult for me, and I just wasn't getting the hang of it. And I know Vince was getting frustrated.
Right.
I know I was frustrated. So I found out as we get close to WrestleMania, Kevin Dunn sits me down, and he was very nice about it, but told me that, Vince wasn't thrilled with my announcing. I just wasn't getting it. They were bringing JR back for WrestleMania. And JR was there. It was in Omaha, Nebraska, I remember. And JR, I was sitting outside, and JR came to talk to me, and he's like, tough day at the office. And, I was upset and angry, but not angry at anybody, just angry that I couldn't do this. So JR sat down with me for 6 hours, taught me exactly how to tell stories. So I went to Vince and said, look, Mick Foley and Edge are doing a hardcore match. I've worked hard with Jim Ross to get down the storytelling aspect. I'd like to call that match. I think I'd be good at it. I've called more of those matches than anyone ever. Barbed wire, thumbtacks, fire, everything. And he said, I'll think about it. And Kevin Dunn called me and told me that Vince liked the idea. And if you go back and watch that match, instead of doing play-by-play, I actually tell stories. And I finally got it.
When I watch the show these days, Michael Cole is putting out so much information. I mean, the social media stuff, the stuff in the ring, whatever they're feeding him through his headset. I mean, that guy's dropping so much information. I mean, he's got to have 6 brains, 12 ears to process all the stuff. He's really, really good at his job.
Michael Cole is phenomenal. He doesn't get enough credit, maybe because he's not from the wrestling business, or because he had to follow Jim Ross, who was so beloved, or because he played a very good villain on TV against Jim Ross, against Jerry Lawler. Of course, you refereed that match, which was highly entertaining. But Michael Cole does not get the credit he deserves, because now not only is he calling pay-per-views, he's calling a 3-hour Raw, he's calling a 2-hour SmackDown. He sits in the production meetings. He has a small phone book full of notes, and he takes it upon himself. I mean, no matter what we put up on WWE.com, he reads every article, he watches every video interview, he references it during the storylines, what we're doing to enhance the story. He is so good, and he doesn't get the credit for it. Let me tell you something right now, that Michael Cole at some point needs to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame for as good as he is.
I actually liked him, and yeah, I agree with everything you just said, but I liked him in his heel role he did, I don't know, what is a year ago now as we speak, when he was doing all that stuff, and I thought it was, I told Kevin Dunn one time in a conversation we were having, I thought so much of what Michael Cole was doing, I said, you guys got a new star. Now, obviously that thing ran its course, but anyway, let's jump into a brutal segue, and let's talk about some ECW wrestling.
Sure.
I got some hardcore questions sitting right in front of me, and I want to get to some other stuff more in depth. But just let's hit some quick hitters right now. Night in, night out basis, Joey. How many guys are getting color on a card?
Oh, God, it was ridiculous. It really, I would say if there were 8 matches on the show, 6 out of them had blood. And I got to be honest, people don't want to believe this, even though I was the voice of ECW. I don't like those matches. I don't want to see 4 guys brawling all over the building, bleeding on each other. The greatest matches I called in ECW were matches like Dean Malenko versus Eddie Guerrero. To this day, their 2 out of 3 falls match that ended in a 30-minute draw, their last match in ECW, was my favorite ECW match to call.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, you're talking about Dean Malenko and the one and only Eddie Guerrero. I mean, those 2 guys. Eddie did, and Dean is awesome in his own right. Awesome, but Eddie had that X factor to him, and he did the little things. It was the little. He could do the big things too, but there's the little things and the mannerisms and stuff he did, and some of his transition stuff and mannerisms, which sent me over the top. And yeah, you put those 2 cats in a ring, and it's magic. So, but with that being one of the greatest matches you've ever seen, and going along with my other question, when is too much blood? Too much blood?
When more than one match has. First of all, I think now WWE has it right. I don't think there should be any blood unless it occurs organically. And I think the reason is that now that MMA is so popular and people watch it as well as boxing, that you know what it really looks like when somebody is bleeding. Blood comes from over the eye. blood comes from the nose, blood comes from the mouth. I've bled because, again, I have a big mouth. I've never bled from the middle of my forehead. And I think it just got to the point where, first of all, it is dangerous. Nobody knew back then what we know now about blood. It's also got to be horrible if you're not working for promotion that changes and or steam cleans or burns the mats every night. That's how people get staph infection and God knows what else. God bless you guys.
People don't know how dirty the mat in a wrestling ring is. You've got guys walking around in dressing rooms, standing at the urinals, maybe sitting on the porcelain throne, taking care of business before they go to the match. The stuff they walk through on the way to the ring. Now, sure, you'll get your couple of guys who'll do the old foot wipe on the apron before they get in, but still, once you get in that thing and you're walking around doing some stuff on the outside of the ring, get back in the ring, like you said, sweating, bleeding, it is the dirtiest thing you could actually lay on probably in the world. But the thing about it is it smells like wrestling. When you're on that mat, you could be having a dog day afternoon, but once the lights go on and you get on that mat and you can smell all that, it brings you up to, I mean, it just makes everything that much better. But anyway, let me get out of that and talk about what's the most violent thing. And you saw a lot of violence, Joey. What is the most violent thing you saw in an ECW ring?
I got a little queasy watching Born to Be Wired between Terry Funk and Sabu. No rope, barbed wire match. You know, because ECW, to set themselves apart at first, before we were getting great wrestlers, great in-ring performers, we were doing a lot of the stuff that, you know, the death match stuff from Japan, and we had Cactus Jack and Terry Funk and Sabu. They did a no-rope barbed wire match. They wound up taking most of the barbed wire off of the turnbuckles, and the end of the match was supposed to be Sabu pinning Terry Funk, but because they were so entwined with each other and barbed wire, that Terry Funk's shoulders could not possibly lay flat on the mat. So thank heaven the referee made the call to just count the 3 count. And if you go back and look, there is a piece of barbed wire at the end of this big giant ball that is about 3 inches from poking Terry Funk in the eye. And, you know, and these are two guys who don't slow up, and we didn't cut the barbs off the barbed wire or use, you know, rubber barbed wire, which they do sell for movies and such. It was disgusting in person, and then when I went to call it in the studio, it was more disgusting to have to watch and call. I don't know what possesses people to do stuff like that. You must really love what you're doing, because I know we weren't paying people a lot of money, but it's unsettling. That kind of violence is unsettling and unnecessary.
But let's talk about you going back and going into the studio and calling that match. How long would that take you? Would you do that on a one-take deal? Would you watch it a couple of times, absorb it, and then lay it down? Or was it just a multi-layered process of trial and error?
No, one-take match. Once Paul trained me,
right.
I would say, and we got through let's say I started it in late 1993. By the time we got through 1994, by 1995, I could just sit down and call a match. Absolutely, just sit in the studio and call a match. Paul would rarely stop me unless he had a line he really wanted in there, and then he got to the point where he would give it to me ahead of time. And I could just sit down and, you know, it's a 45-minute show with commercials. There's 10 minutes of on cameras, 35 minutes. Once it was edited, I would be in and out calling it.
You never phoned it in. I believed what you were saying. I believed the reactions. I believed everything about you. So how draining was it for you to go through this process and go through a session worth of calling these matches? I mean, it had to take something out of you, or it had to pump you up to watch this. I mean, it's almost like you were in the ring because you're in the moment.
You know, I've heard you talk on the podcast about the high that you have, the adrenaline rush when you get done with a match. And I've never had a match. It's probably the only regret I have is that it's the one thing in our industry that I never got to do, so I don't know what that adrenaline rush feels like. But after you call matches like that, and then it's certainly magnified when you call live matches, absolutely there's an adrenaline rush. If you are not driving several hours to the next town and you go back to your hotel room, I can tell you that I couldn't sleep for hours. It absolutely gets, I wouldn't call it draining because it's exciting.
Exactly. But you got that residual and it went through you because you could feel that. And there's that come down phase where, hey man, you just gotta chill out. And anyway, so that being what it is, how would you describe Joey, a South Philly ECW arena crowd.
Oh my God! I think I once said that they would cheer the hunter that shot Bambi's mother. They hated me at first when Paul first introduced me, and there I am, and I'm 5'7". I'm probably 180 to 190 pounds, depending on whether I was trying to cut weight or not, and I'm wearing a suit, which announcers weren't wearing back then. At that time, all the announcers were wearing polo shirts on WCW or those god-awful jean jackets or varsity jackets on WWE. So I'm wearing a suit, also because I had a day job where I had to wear a suit, and they would call me Poindexter. And, like everybody else, when you first get there, if you're not a Steve Austin or Eddie Guerrero or a Mick Foley or somebody who has a rep coming in, you're a new guy, or Pretty Boy Tommy Dreamer, same thing. They ate me up. They ate me up when I was up in the Eagles Nest. They ate me up in the parking lot. They ate me up when I was at Tony Luke's. And I realized, normally when people insult you in life, yeah, you might go back at them. But I understood. I'm in the business. I'm new. It is not my place to not only answer back anybody in the locker room, but I have no business answering these fans yet. So you take it, you get better, and eventually, hopefully, you'll earn their respect. And then I became one of them.
Right. Hey, what's the craziest or most spectacular bump you ever saw? Because there was a bunch of them.
The one where I thought the person was hurt the worst, there was, we called it a Stairway to Hell, I believe, and it was Sandman versus Sabu. So it was before, TLC. We just called it, I don't think we called it tables, ladders, and chairs. You were able to use everything.
Right.
And from where I was standing, I couldn't see that they had set up two tables between the ring and the guardrail from where I was standing. So Sandman, Sabu tips over the ladder, or Sandman, I think, was going to do, I really can't call it a dive. It was just gravity. So a somersault on top of Sabu. I didn't see the tables. I thought he went all the way to the floor. And I started screaming at Paul. I remember in front of everyone, this is too much, this is whatever. He's screaming back at me. And then I felt like a moron because I realized that they had tables to slow them up somewhat. But so that was the worst perceived thing I ever saw. The worst thing that ever actually happened was, we called it the Gumby bump. Mike Awesome, who again, the late Mike Awesome, who was 6'5" and 265 pounds, but flew around like a cruiserweight, dove over the top rope onto J.T. Smith, who was a local guy, and we didn't have a lot of room between the ring and the guard rail. J.T. Smith made sure to stop Mike from hitting the floor, and JT was bent backwards over the guardrail, and I thought he had broken his back. That was the worst thing I ever saw, because I thought I watched a man break his back, and it's online. It's bad looking. We wound up putting it in the open of the show once we knew JT didn't break his back.
One of the things that was an interesting bump to me was when New Jack jumped off that balcony and just kind of swan dived, or whatever you would call that dive, onto the guys below. Just from a visual, it was stunning. Again, I wouldn't want to do it. I wouldn't want to be the guy on the receiving end, but just seeing him launch off that balcony. Do you remember the bump I'm talking about?
The bump, he did it so many times.
Oh, I didn't know he did it all the time. I just thought it was a one-off.
It became his thing, and it got higher and higher and higher and higher, to the point where we were in Danbury, Connecticut, and it was New Jack versus Vic Grimes of the Baldies, and there was a table below them, and they were all the way up, like towards the top of the building, and as they're going down, they're both supposed to go down through the table, and I guess Vic froze up and didn't go at the right time and said, I can't, and Jack said, too bad, we're going, and because of that, Jack falls, misses the table completely, and shatters, I believe, I don't know if it was his ankle or his face or both. And Vic might have fallen on top of him. It was really bad. Hey. And I just think, I understand that everyone was trying to one-up each other, but I think it comes to a point where if you can't actually wrestle in the ring, maybe this isn't for you.
Give me your opinion on some of the chair shots you were seeing on a weekly basis, because, man, there were some guys throwing some serious steel in that squared circle, mister.
Well, I mean, you took some of them, too, not only in ECW, but even in WWE before. WWE now has a policy of no shots with anything to the head, even if you put your hands up, which is great, because what we're learning about concussions now, and with the recent settlement of the NFL with all the veterans, what I saw, especially in ECW, you talk about Balls Mahoney and Masato Tanaka, or Masato Tanaka and Mike Awesome. It was absolutely brutal to watch. It was like the match between Rock and Mick Foley in WWE. To watch that, and at the time, maybe because I was younger, maybe because, you think you're invincible and everyone's invincible when you're younger, you're watching it. I look back at it now, and it kind of makes me sick to my stomach. And
it does.
It was a lot of unnecessary risks being taken at that time.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I might have taken a shot to the dome unprotected, but I was a hands-up guy. It's a reaction thing. You got to protect yourself. Yeah, I took a couple unprotected, but, man, that's just you got to take care of yourself. I understand you want the guys to, you think you're doing the right thing, but you got to do the smart thing. If anybody out there at the local or independent level is listening to this show, if you are going to take a chair shot, and like you said, WWE, there's none. But if you're at the local or independent level, take my advice, put your hands up or refuse to take one, because for the money that you're making, it really is not worth it. You should not come out of the business with 16 concussions. It just should not happen. If you have over 3 or 4 even, you're doing something drastically wrong. So if I can, point anybody in the right direction, easy on the chair shots. Don't be a mark. Joey, did at any time you think that, hey, man, we're taking this whole thing of Extreme Championship Wrestling, this whole thing a little too extreme? We're taking this too far? Because you guys were balls out. It was just one snowballing, violence escalating. What was your thoughts on that? I mean, you're sitting there watching this every single week, calling it up close and personal, and watching these guys put their lives on the line.
Absolutely, and I'll remember the moment where it was the violence and the spirit of what we did was just too much, and unfortunately, it happened when Kurt Angle, who was not yet in our industry, but was an Olympic gold medalist, had just won the gold medal and was a guest at the ECW arena, and I had the pleasure of interviewing him in the ring, which was great because I remember watching him win the gold medal. Didn't know he had a broken back. So we do the interview. He's now up on the stage watching this with me and Paul, and this is the night that Raven crucified the Sandman on an actual crucifix that Sandman had built because he was a construction worker. They crucified him and made him a crown of barbed wire. And nobody knew that was going to happen, with the exception of the people involved.
Right.
And my guess would be Paul, despite the fact that he denied it. And I'm standing next to Kurt Angle. I'm Catholic. I believe Kurt is. He turns to me because I'm the guy in the suit, so I must have some authority.
Yeah, of course.
And starts screaming at me, and I'm apologizing. I'm like, sir, I had absolutely no idea, and he is screaming.
And that's a shoot, right? You didn't know?
No. Now, of course, at this point, Paul's nowhere to be found. All of a sudden, now the crap's hitting the fan, and, now it's just me and the Olympic gold medalist.
So what's your reaction to this? You're trying to say to Angle, settle down. I can't believe it either. So your gut reaction is what? Horror?
Horror. Absolute horror. Who thought of this? Who thought this was a good idea? Not only for the people involved, for the blue-collar Italian fans in South Philadelphia, who thought this was, we all know it's the only time I ever saw in the ECW arena, we call it heat. For your fans listening who may not be wrestling fans, we call it heat, which is when, the fans really turn on a villain or a heel. This was bad heat. Like, not we're angry with you and we want to pay to see you get your ass kicked. Like, we want to hop the rail and kick your ass for real and like maybe to see you thrown in jail. So I guess Paul went to Raven and made him apologize for his use of religious iconography, which I believe is the way Raven put it, and Paul maintained that he didn't know anything about it, and Raven backed up that story, and I would like to know how much Raven/Scotty got paid to say that.
Right.
But that was about the worst thing, because it wasn't just violence, and it wasn't just a violent image. It was just offensive on so many levels, and I got my ass chewed out by a man who could tear off my arms and legs without breaking a sweat for an Angle.
Oh, yeah. That Kurt highly offended. That's great.
That's great.
Hey, what happened to Joe? He got his arms, legs torn off by Angle. It was all a misunderstanding. Hey, let's talk about some of the pre-show promos Paul Lee would drop on the guys before some of the shows, because Paul Lee took the old go out and win one for the Gipper routine to a whole nother galaxy. Now, he was very compelling, and for me, it appeared all the talent had bought into the direction of the promotion, and a big part of that direction, obviously, was violence and a lot of, no pun intended, oh my God moments. How did he execute these promos that so everybody bought into them?
Paul was really a Svengali when it came to motivating his locker room. It wasn't the Vince Lombardi motivation. Some people would say, it was he had people drinking the Kool-Aid, which is I guess a Jim Jones reference.
Right.
But, basically it was us against them, which we now know was not the case, because at some point WWE had a big stake in ECW, and from what I was told, Paul from the very beginning was also a paid consultant for WWE, which is, I've now been told and had it corroborated. But still, Paul sold us on it's us against them. And that's the story. And, we're the ones that nobody else wants.
You think Paulie was freelancing those promos, or he thought about them, or he was just coming from his heart and his guts?
No, it's coming from his heart and his guts, because I tell you now, when we interview him now for WWE.com, you don't have to write. Like, sometimes take an interview and you'll have to write it. You have to input the quotes. Paul speaks like he's writing. So
Right.
It is possible he did it ahead of time, but he does it on the fly now.
Right.
So Paul speaks as if he is writing a speech that's going to be recorded for posterity. And he really, got us fired up. Frankly, I didn't think you needed to be fired up in that situation, but he certainly motivated people, and maybe he was the reason that people went and did things beyond the point that they should have been doing them.
Man, but so speak to the mindset of the boys after those talks. Ramped up, ready to go?
Yes.
Run through a brick wall, do whatever it takes, jump off a ledge?
Absolutely. Paul had everyone so fired up about what we needed to do to break through and get noticed and get on more TV stations and get on pay-per-view and make more money, that Paul absolutely got everyone amped up to go out there just like a head football coach does before you run through the tunnel. Absolutely.
Hey, man, that was a pretty wild dressing room, though, man. I tell you what, I came in, I torn my tricep, Paul gives me the call, and, I can't work, brings me in to cut promos. I kind of palled up with the pit bulls, and one of them's no longer with us. And, man, that dressing room at the ECW Arena was an interesting place to be. And I won't go into specifics, but everybody kind of clicked out and had their little gatherings, and there was a lot of stuff going on backstage, mister.
Well, yeah, without getting too detailed, because I think people understand what we mean.
Yep.
Let's put it this way. You were injured, and Paul was bringing you in and paying you whatever he was paying you just to do promos until you could work, and probably whatever you were getting paid was more than most of the guys in the locker room were getting paid. So for them to go out and have the money to party like they did, first of all, they didn't. They were probably blowing everything they had and whatever they were making from their day jobs. And when I saw that, that didn't appeal to me, and I can't run other people down, but I got to wonder at that point, if you just can't wait for things to be over so you can go out and party and everything else, are you really in this for the love of what you're doing, or do you want to be famous and be a rock star who can go out and party like this and have women want to be with you just because you're on TV? And I saw too much of that, and I didn't understand it, because I'm looking around and, I'm thinking these guys are not, even you were stunning Steve Austin. You had been on national, international television with WCW. I mean, and you had the right to party, and you weren't. But these guys were not nearly at that level, and they were going out and acting, not all of them, certainly, but going out and acting as if they were. And it didn't make sense to me.
I don't know if they were acting like superstars. I just think that's kind of the mindset of the boys in some territories at some times, obviously earlier times than today. Birds of a feather will flock together and, in the right atmosphere, and certainly ECW Arena and a lot of that stuff was the right atmosphere, things happen. So I don't think it's a thing of wanting or partying like a superstar. It was just kind of the culture.
I agree. And to your point, though, there were certain cliques. And there were other cliques that didn't party. I mean, you look at guys like Taz and Tommy Dreamer, who I'm still friends with, who I still speak to.
Lance Storm.
Yep. But at the very beginning, like those two guys, but Lance and Jerry, Jerry Lynn, and there were a lot of guys who didn't do any of that. And those are the guys, me personally, I wound up hanging out with. But I didn't really go out because I met my wife. She was my girlfriend at the time. You met her, and I'm going to tell this story and embarrass you because I'm going to kill your whole gimmick now. But when you came to the studio and my girlfriend was with me, who is now my wife of 16 years, I introduced you. You said, "Very nice to meet you, miss." And that was so polite and gentlemanly. And I don't want to say that wrestlers in the 90s weren't polite or gentlemanly, but wrestlers in the 90s weren't polite or gentlemanly. And to this day, my wife loves you for that. And when you became the biggest star in the business, she was so happy because she likes when good things happen to good people. And she was thrilled when it happened for you, and she was thrilled when it happened for Mick, who's also a friend of mine. But again, I didn't go out and party because we got to the point where my wife came with me everywhere. So it wasn't for me.
But you was always a pretty straight cat anyway, weren't you?
Oh God, yeah. I've never done drugs. I've never had a cigarette. I have one drink a week, and it's usually with a meal because I like the way it tastes. So if I'm eating something that would go with a glass of wine, I have a glass of wine. If I'm having pizza, and I want a beer, but it's one drink a week. It's always one. Absolutely. I don't want to sound like I'm preaching to anybody, but my feeling is, God gave us the gift of life. You only have one. You have one mind. You have one body. I'm not going to screw it up. That's like somebody giving you a new car and you go drive it into the wall.
I agree. All right, I've been talking to my main man at Joey Styles on Twitter. I want to thank him for the communication today, sharing great stories from Extreme Championship Wrestling, and we will continue this conversation next Tuesday on the Steve Austin Show. I'm coming right back to wrap this whole thing up.
Hey, it's Kristen,
Marnie,
and Haley from the Ask Women podcast. And this week we have the hilarious Jay Larson.
Hey, guys.
Hey,
fellas.
Jay gives us all the advice on how to be a ladies' man.
Yes, and how to ask for what you want.
And just step up and don't be afraid to fall on your face.
Don't be a pussy.
Exactly.
It's a numbers game, and you're in charge, so listen up.
This week on the Ask Women podcast on PodcastOne.com.
The Steve Austin Show. The Steve Austin Show.
All right. That is about it. This is, as we say in the business, it's time to go home. It's time to end this shenanigan and pull the curtains down. Yeah, that's right. I've been talking to my main man, Joey Styles, the voice of ECW. You can follow Joey at Joey Styles. I'm bringing him back next Tuesday for part 2 of our conversation of Extreme Championship Wrestling. You're not going to want to miss these stories. The first session was great. The second session will kick as much ass. I guarantee it, because that's what we do here. Open up a can of audio whoop ass. And that's about it, folks. That's all I've got right now. But before I go, I want to say thank you for you people helping out, showing us a little bit of Amazon love by going to SteveAustinShow.com and clicking on that Amazon banner. Anytime you purchase something, it kicks back a little love to the show and keeps us on the air for free. I dig it the most. Deer season around the corner. Check out the BSRscope.com. Get set up with a 4x12x50 scope. Check me out at Steve Austin BSR. Check Ardat and Arthur H. Webb on Twitter. Hey, this is Steve Austin, and I'll catch your ass down the road.
Hey, hold on. Don't leave yet, because now that the show's over, don't forget to sign up for your free trial of Hulu Plus and start watching your favorite hit shows right now. To get your extended free trial, go to huluplus.com/Steve. That's huluplus.com/Steve.